everyone. It's time to sit down and listen. I am Bente Torjussen, the Executive Director of AVA Gallery and Art Center. And since I am not among the storytellers tonight, I can even use my notes. Welcome. It is so wonderful to see all of you here. And I just wanted to give a few acknowledgements before we are starting. We are now entering into the second year of this wildly wonderful Mudroom program at AVA. Offered quarterly here in our beautiful gallery spaces, it was launched last September as a brainchild of AVA board member Emily Ridgway. This past year has been a particularly notable one for Emily. In addition to creating the Mudroom and putting it on the map as one of the truly sought-after social gathering places in the Upper Valley, she married Eric Goldwag, who will be introducing tonight's readers. And this past June, they had a beautiful baby boy named Jules. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Eric. And welcome to Jules, who, without any doubt, soon will have some wonderful stories to tell. Also, I want to thank the many volunteers and friends of Emily and Eric who have worked so hard on pulling everything together. And a special thanks to Anne Thompson and Deb Lavoie, who have created and produced the Mudroom posters throughout the year. AVA staff member Debbie Callahan has been the point person here, tending carefully and capably to numerous logistics that have had to be dealt with every time. Those who have been here on previous occasions know that the visual environment changes with each Mudroom. This time, we are surrounded by paintings and sculptures by Louise Glass, and in the Wenberg Gallery and the Elizabeth May Gallery are paintings by Sarah Lubin and Laura Kawretsky, all of them worthwhile intermission to take a close look at. And when you come back for the next Mudroom on December 11th, the galleries will look completely different, filled by a variety of artwork in a colorful holiday display. AVA is a membership organization, membership-supported organization. And tonight, we have in the audience people who have been AVA members for years, people who have joined recently, and I hope people who will become AVA members, because you are the ones who make it possible for us to have programs such as these. AVA as an organization engages with artists and enriches the community in many, many ways. So please, if you're not a member already, consider becoming one. There are 6 storytellers tonight, and Eric will introduce them. Though I just wanted to point out that several of them have long-time, strong ties to AVA, including Kirsten Gehlbach, John Finley, and Jennifer Rickards. Mike Humphrey is a second-time Mudroom participant, and Ashley Kehoe and Dorothy Judd will also join tonight's storytellers. Welcome to you all, and again a particular thank you to Emily and Eric for launching the Mudroom and for keeping it going.
Thank you, Bente. So 2 quick announcements before we start. The first is that if you have not filled out a raffle ticket yet, please do so. They're out on the side there, and we'll draw them at intermission, I think, and the winner gets 2 free tickets to the next Mudroom event and gets a 1-year AVA membership. So please fill out your raffle tickets. They're free. And we'll have an intermission after the third storyteller, so we'll have food and desserts available and beer and drinks as well, so please help yourself. Be about probably a 15-minute intermission, and we'll have musicians playing as well. And then along those lines, we wanted to thank Mike Wood and Bonnie Waters for playing with us tonight. And Bonnie has CDs available for sale if anyone wants to buy those. And they are here, as everyone is, as a volunteer. So please tip them well. And our first storyteller is Kirsten Gehlbach. Did I pronounce that right? I realized I asked how to pronounce her first name and not her last, so which is the more complicated of the two. And she is a marketing consultant and freelance writer living in Norwich. In 1989, she founded Results Marketing Communications to provide project management and creative services to businesses and nonprofit organizations. Her freelance writing includes technical reports, sales literature, press releases, feature stories, speeches, and cultural reviews. And she is a past AVA volunteer, and as Benta mentioned, and so she's excited to be here tonight in a very different capacity. So welcome, Kirsten.
So the theme tonight is sparks. So some of you may think of sparks as, hitting rocks together. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. So you hit this, rocks together, creates a spark, add kindling, and then it gets into a fire. Or the sparklers that you wave around in the air and just watch the sparks come around. Or fireworks that caress down. But my story is a little different. Sparks is my son, the spark of my life. He came in and was given the name Sparks by my sister because he would jump and surprise everybody anywhere they were. He loved to do that. So let's go back. Sparks was born almost here, upstairs in AVA, 9 weeks before he was supposed to be. Luckily, his dad came by. We shared an office space, and he said, "Something's wrong." I said, "Yeah, something's wrong." And we went to APD, and then they told us to go to the hitch, and I lied when Roy would ask me, how far are the contractions? I'm like, 5 minutes, when they were 3. We got there. Just 10 minutes to spare. And he was a beautiful spark. He was amazing. Just a wonderful spark of imagination, of creativity. He took lots of classes at AVA. He was an amazing spark. And that spark just lived on. I took him to castles in Wales, and he would make up, fantasies, fairy tale kind of stories. And, we would go around the different castles, and he fell down the stairs. You remember that, Parks? Fell down the stairs, but he had a helmet on that we had borrowed from the place that we were staying at. I mean, he was just a wonderful, amazing person. All right, fast forward. Let's go a little fast forward. All right, hockey, lacrosse, soccer, all those kind of guy things. And then teenage years, I didn't know anything about anything. Of course, that's what they all say. I'm sure you all Have that, yeah. Okay. So I didn't know anything about anything, but he moved away, went out west. And, I took him out west to visit colleges, which he all got, accepted, but he decided, no, I want to be a lifty, I want to do the Tahoe thing, I want to, just enjoy life. I'm like, cool, that's great, I'm really happy for you. Then he moved back with his girlfriend and his dog, their dog, and yeah, it was an adjustment. My empty nest was now fuller than it had ever been, and I'm not sure he really wanted to be there, but he was there. And it's a good thing that he was there, because my health took a nosedive. It was slow at first, but then it went down. He was there. He took care of me. Roles reversed. It's tough when your roles are reversed, but he was there. I was told that I had, so it was in January. I was told I had 6 months, get my affairs in order. I stand here 9 months later and getting better every day, and I could not have done it without Sparks. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Our next storyteller is Ashley Kehoe. Ashley lives, as she tells me, just around the corner from AVA. I think they share a backyard, actually. She moved here from Chicago last fall for a job at Dartmouth as an instructional designer, where she helps faculty and staff develop high-impact learning experiences for students. And since moving here, she has made the Upper Valley her home and found a great circle of future lifelong friends. And apparently she helps organize a Thursday girls' night, which is actually happening here tonight, which is exciting for me because I've never been to a girls' night before. So this is a first for me, and maybe probably a first for a lot of you. So welcome, Ashley.
Welcome to Girls' Night. So when I think about sparks, I think not about a fire that you build with matches, but the fire that you sometimes have to light inside yourself. You know that feeling that's kind of electric when you just feel like your life is about to take on some momentum and there's a spark in you and it just needs to ignite. So that's what I think about when I think about sparks. And this story is important to me because about a year ago, I was completely sparkless. I was not the dynamic, bubbly, smiling person that you see before you. I was actually in kind of a funk. And let me paint a picture for you of what that funk looked like. I would sit on the couch wearing a Snuggie. So I was one of the only people that actually used a Snuggie for its intended purpose. It wasn't ironic. It was, I'm cozy on my couch. I don't want to go anywhere. I was living in Chicago. I had lots of good friends there, but I would order pizza every week to the point that they knew my order. And that's actually very hard to do when you live in a city of 3 million people. So I accomplished that. My roommate would tease me that I could watch more episodes of Ghost Adventures, even reruns that I had seen before, than anyone that she had ever met. So I would sit on the couch in my Snuggie with my pizza, watching Ghost Adventures. I was just in a really bad place in my life, and I didn't know what I needed to do to get that spark going again. And I had felt that in my life before, but at this point, it was just very blah for me. It was very hopeless. I didn't really know where to take my life. Looking back, actually, I think I was probably in a state of depression. I just didn't know what to call it at the time. And so I was trying to figure out, how do I get this going? How do I get out of this? And it's very hard to get out of when you're in it. And so, as all good sparks happen, it actually happened when I was driving to work, stuck in Chicago traffic. And I came up behind a bus, and on the back of the bus, there was just this big sign, and the sign said, "Someday is today." And I was like, someday is today. What have I been doing with my life? And on top of that, the ad, some of you may have actually seen this. I've seen them other places besides Chicago now. But the ad was actually by the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And so that has special meaning for me because I lost my dad to leukemia about 16 years ago. And so this message to me had so many meanings. It was telling me, light that spark, get that spark going in your life. But it also brought me back to this place and this time in my life when I remembered feeling that spark, that hope, that drive, that something, and what it was like to live when my dad was in the world. And so it really took me back to that moment. And it made me remember another time when I had that momentum going, when I was about 14, when my dad was diagnosed. And I remembered, one day I got up and I went in the bathroom and I just shaved all my hair off. And I didn't think about it before. I just went in and I did it. It was that spark that just told me, go do this. And so as I'm sitting here behind this bus, probably blocking traffic at this point, because I'm having this life momentum realization, something in me lit that fire. And so that very same day, I did what all people do when they're trying to change their life, which is I started a blog. And so what I didn't tell you at the beginning of the story is that in 6 days, I turned 30, 6 days from today. And so I started thinking, at this point, I had a little over a year to go before I turned 30. And I thought, what are all the things that I want to do before I turn 30? And so I started this blog and I started this list of 30 things I really wanted to do before I turned 30. And the act of doing that, for me, it was personal because it gave me a chance to reflect on how I got into this funk and how I needed to get the hell out of it and never get back into it. But it also started creating this community where I would talk to friends about it and I would see them get inspired and they would react to me differently than when I was sitting on the couch, like with pizza crumbs on my Snuggie. And all of a sudden, people were like, oh, we want to hang out with you again. You know, you're fun to be around. And so it really did create this change and this spark in my life. And so actually, number 29 on my list was to tell a story. Originally, it was to give a commencement address that would... So the thing about my list is that I decided that it was okay to change things as I went because I didn't want to stress myself out. So when I moved here and I found out about this, I was like, okay, I could do that, and then maybe it'll go viral, and then I'll get the commencement address. So anyway, so I wanted to end my story by actually taking a picture with you all for my blog. So first I'm gonna take one of you. So everyone, smile. Look really entertained. Okay. Okay, you could have done better, but that's fine. I'll Photoshop it. And so that's my story about sparks, and I hope that it inspires you like it's inspired some other people that maybe have been in that same place that can be a very dark place, and sometimes you need to be the one that lights your own spark. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Before we do the next storyteller, I just wanted to have a call out for any possible musicians out there. We would love to find more people to line up for the next few events. So if you are a musician or you play in a band or you know anyone who is, just send us an email and we can try and get you on the schedule for either the next event or the one after, or maybe even the one after that. So that seems to, finding musicians is always the hardest. Yes, question from the audience. I don't know what that is. Well, that's good. That would be a good place to start. Okay. Yellow House. Thank you. I knew this was going to be a good announcement. So, okay. Our next storyteller is John Finley. John is 29 years old. He grew up in Hanover and now resides here in Lebanon. And John has survived 4 brain surgeries early in life, and in recent years has become a speaker for the disability rights movement. He serves on many statewide boards and is a co-founder of the Spark Community Center. John?
Yeah. Hi. They don't build these for people who are over 6 feet tall. Okay. Thanks for the applause. So, I guess you could say that my story might have even started with a spark. I don't know what they call a brain tumor, how that starts. I don't know if they've scientifically figured it out, but maybe it was a spark of the neurons when I was 3 years old. And that kind of set me on a very different path than maybe my life could have been. But I wouldn't change it for the world because I feel like I've met so many amazing people and have learned so much from it. Through my experience with having had my surgeries when I was 3, 5, 8, and 10, I learned a lot about, humility and compassion and empathy. And in my walk later in life after high school, where there wasn't as much of that, I started meeting people in the community who were served by local area agencies that provide them services to be able to live their lives seamlessly in the community with all of us. Because that's really what it's all about. Like, even though I have a frontal lobe injury, I have an aide that comes to my house for, 4 hours in the morning from 10 to 2, helps me get around because I'm legally blind, this eye, and tunnel vision this eye. I'm like a submarine, I got a periscope. So with that little amount of help, I'm able to live seamlessly in the community. The one thing I always found interesting, though, is that Medicaid, which provides the funding for this, if you live with your parents, and I do not, I luckily live independently in an apartment of my own, they say, well, you got to get out of their house and in the community. So I talk to some of my friends who live with their parents and say, well, what did you do today? And they'd be like, well, my aide took me to Walmart. I was like, what'd you do in Walmart? They went for a walk. Yeah. I'd be like, did you have to buy anything at Walmart? No, I just went for a walk. Yeah. I was like, you went for a walk in Walmart? Are you for real? And I talked to another friend, what did you do today? And they'd be like, oh, I went to the airport. I was like, oh yeah, did you do like a flight test or something? They're like, no, just watch the planes take off. I was like, you just parked there and looked at I was like, what planes? There's like 4 planes that leave Lebanon Airport. What are you talking about? I mean, seriously. So, it started to dig into me, and I guess it sparked a kind of frustration in me at the system about how it just accepted the fact that you had to get out of the parents' house and in the community. But what does that mean? Because there's a difference from being a part of the community, like moments like this when we're all gathered together, and sitting in a Books A Million when you can't read, but they have good coffee and a comfortable chair, So I started getting kind of mad about that. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a place where we could go where we weren't just loitering in a store and, have like shopkeepers wondering when we're going to buy something, And so I met a year ago an amazing lady named Lisa Green and just kind of vented. And we met just in my humble little apartment here in Lebanon. And I said, man, I wish there was a place where we could go and we could do arts and crafts and play music and put on theatrical performances and garden and cook and just do anything that someone's heart desires. Because that's really what it's all about, is trying to find what our inner spark is. I like what you said about, how spark is on the inside, because that's kind of how I came up with the name for the community center. And it's funny because literally a week after I meet Lisa, we're like, oh, that's nice. It was good to meet you. She's part of a parents group for individuals with disabilities. She's like, maybe you could come and talk sometime. I said, that's great. A week later, she's calling saying, hey, so I set up a meeting for us to go tour the old Lebanon Junior High for our community center. You want to come? And I was like, what? And it's just been like this whirlwind experience. It felt like every domino clicked into place, and it's been honestly just fate itself. And when we came up with the name Spark, it was because we believe that everyone, even if you have a disability, you have a spark worth sharing with your community. And I see all my friends not for their disabilities, but for their abilities and their amazing courage in life, that no matter what has been thrown their way, they always come into the center with a smile on their face. You know, some of them are incredibly skilled writers, incredibly skilled artists, and we've only been open 2 months now, right down the road. And I'm so honored to be here today because we had a kind of an opening fling right here at AVA, thanks to Benta. And man, was this room packed. Pretty much as packed as is now, a lot of standing in the back, actually, too. And sadly, some people back here who just had to listen. They were like... And to see the amount of people who came out just on that day when we were going to tell them what Spark was about, to get them psyched up about it, was amazing. So when we opened in June, we had, you know, easily over 200 people in attendance spilling out of our tent. And it's been a wild ride, you know. I'm always overjoyed to go into the center and see the people enjoying their experience there. And, you know, I've had people come up to me and say, you know, I was sitting at home, you know, before Spark was here. Or I was just driving aimlessly through the plazas before Spark was here. And it kind of warms my heart because I'm like, wow, I wasn't just some crazy dude with a, you know, pipe dream that was not realistic at all. Like, people really get this, you know? And we're always looking for volunteers and caring people and talented people to share their spark, because it's not just a community center for people with disabilities. We have a special mission for people with disabilities, because that's where my passion lies, in trying to make sure that they find their inner spark. But it's a community center for the whole community, for the whole Upper Valley, Vermont and New Hampshire. And so I guess this is almost like me soliciting at a speaking engagement. But you guys should come, because it's awesome. And we'll have lots of fun activities, and hopefully our family there will grow, and you can all share your spark with us. So thank you very much.
I'm not over 6 feet tall, so I'll bring this back down. Thanks, John. No. That's our first half, so we're going to take about a 10-15 minute intermission. So please buy food, buy desserts, buy CDs, do the raffle tickets, and then when we come back, we'll draw those. Thank you. I wanted to thank the two people who are serving food out there. One, the wonderful Thai food is from Pan Sitavadi. She does not have a restaurant, but she does do catering for weddings, special events, anything like that at all. I thought the food was great. She has little cards out there. She lives in Lyme on Goose Pond Road, and she's available for doing any of that. And then the desserts are from Isabel Cohen-Marr up in Derby Line, Vermont, who has come down. This is her second time coming all the way down from the border to provide desserts for us, and they are absolutely wonderful. So anyone who also wants to have catering or anything like that for desserts can get Isabel's card, and it's a nice drive up to Derby Line. Next, one more announcement. We have a lot of announcements tonight. I was made aware, for everyone here obviously is into stories, that's why you all came. I was made aware of the White Mountain Storytelling Festival, September 26th to 28th in Waterville Valley. It's a whole weekend of all different types of stories, ranging from ghost stories to epics, folk tales, ancient myths, original stories. I think I saw even that there was a chili cookout. Did I catch that right? Chili competition. So I think it's a wonderful. I got that? Yeah. So a wonderful event, it sounds like, and there are cards and flyers up at the front table if anyone wants to pick one of those up and head over to Waterville in a couple weekends. Okay. Next storyteller is Jennifer Rickards. Jennifer lives in Lyme and is returning to the Mudroom for a second storytelling event. So we appreciate her second appearance here. And there you are. She's a sometimes writer of poetry and real life stories, and is delighted to be back at AVA. Jennifer.
And I actually live in Etna, but that's really Lyme, but
Sorry.
that's neither here nor there. Let's see, I had the opportunity at the end of the summer to spend a week in Woods Hole, which is a lovely seaside town on Cape Cod. Anyone know it? Oh, good, great. So this will have some meaning to some of you. This is a town where I spent a week or two every summer when I was growing up. My grandmother lived there year-round, so this was our summer vacation. My parents would stuff us all into the station wagon, and we would take this 8-hour drive from Pennsylvania up to Massachusetts, and it was wonderful. I mean, it really was sort of the perfect summer vacation for all of us, and we loved it. My grandmother's house was within walking distance of the beach, and the Shining Sea Bikeway ran just behind her house, so we could take bike rides every day. We could go to the beach. We would walk into town and sit on the wall and people watch and eat ice cream cones. And I loved watching the drawbridge go up and down. That was such a novelty. I'd never really seen that before. And you can hear the horns of the ferries going back and forth to Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket. And it was really just a wonderful opportunity. And I think maybe it has something to do with feeling the years winding away from me, but I wanted to give my own children a little taste of this experience. And they don't have grandparents that provide this kind of constancy of experience, and certainly not near the beach, which is pretty special. So my grandmother actually died about 6 years ago, but her house is still in our family. My uncle bought it from his remaining siblings. And so I emailed him kind of out of the blue and said, can we rent your house just for a week in the summer? And this is not somebody I'm particularly close to, but we were fortunate that he agreed immediately, and we made plans to visit. So my grandmother was a complicated person. She bought this house in Woods Hole when, after her husband left her for his secretary. And she still had 2 kids living at home. My mother and her sister were already off kind of living on their own, but she had 2 more children 12 years later, and they were teenagers living at home. And so buying this house on her own was a big undertaking. And I admired my grandmother so much. I mean, she really had all of these qualities that were so admirable. Because buying this house was a really big deal, I remember hearing stories about her sleeping in the kitchen on a cot the first few years because she was renting out the rooms to visiting scientists who were coming to Woods Hole. And she worked well into her 60s, and she swam every day to stay healthy. She was a really talented artist. She did these beautiful watercolors of fruit and flowers and the Nobska Lighthouse, and I still have a number of her paintings. But my grandmother had some qualities that were not as admirable. She had favorites among her children, and my mother was at the bottom of her list, and my sisters and I were therefore at the bottom of the grandchild list as well. And, talking with my grandmother was always sort of an exercise in trying to balance out that admiration and then all of the sort of criticism and comparisons that were always part of that conversation. We had this opportunity to go stay at her old house, and my husband and I took our 2 daughters down, and it was wonderful. I mean, in so many ways, it was just what I wanted. We had this great week where we were swimming every day and riding bikes and eating ice cream every day, because that's part of having a good vacation, as far as I'm concerned. We played board games. I mean, it was really wonderful. At the same time, the funny thing about family vacations is that you always take all your family dynamics with you, and spending a week of really great togetherness is sometimes a lot of togetherness. And so my daughters were bickering, and my husband and I were compromising, and I found myself biting my tongue often, so that I wasn't offering that kind of constructive criticism that my grandmother was so known for. The kind that's not at all constructive, but is more, can't you be just a little bit more like somebody else that you're not? So I think that I went back there sort of looking for this spark of recognition of my own childhood, but instead spent a lot of time thinking about parenting my own children, about my mother, who wasn't perfect but worked really hard at being a good parent, and I think was pretty awesome. And my grandmother, who I think did her best. She worked hard at her life, but it was often not good enough. And I never want to be that parent who whose children have to sort of gird themselves for that annual visit, or have to prepare themselves mentally for how am I going to respond to the criticism this time, or who is not welcome when their child is dying because they bring too much baggage with them, so that they are more work than they are help. So I think I left this vacation thinking less about my own childhood and thinking more about being the kind of parent that I want to be and that I know I should be, and hoping that that's good enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer. Our next storyteller is Mike Humphrey. Mike lives in White River Junction with a dog and a cat, and he is an avid attendee of the White River Writers Center. And he tells me that he gets rejection notices from periodicals that even if they did accept his work, he wouldn't want to read them. Mike?
It's a prompt, it's not notes. Good evening, it's nice to see you. Sparks. The first time I met her, I saw her in the distance. The sparks were more abundant than I can even describe to you. She was a tall girl. I remember honey, clover honey, which was the color of her hair and her skin. And she had a seductive smile and a throaty voice and a redolence, imbued with a redolence that nature reserves for 15-year-old girls. I was 17 and a senior in high school, and I fell in love. The second half of our senior year, of our high school year, had to go in split sessions because it was overcrowded. So seniors and juniors went in the morning, and sophomores and freshmen went in the afternoon. My friend was a sophomore. So we missed a lot of time together. We couldn't spend time together before class, or walking down the hall holding hands, or at lunch, or time after school before I went to baseball. And then one day she said to me, why don't you come to my house? No, she didn't say why. She said, come to my house in the morning. You can go a little late, who cares? Now, the tone of voice, I think if this young woman would have said to me, kill your brothers, I would have asked, which way do you want me to do it? That was that kind of relationship. So the first time, she lived a couple of blocks from school, and her parents worked, and her brother was in my class, so she was alone at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I went to her house, and an hour or so later, when it was ready for me to go to school, I didn't have a note, a late note. So she got me a piece of paper and a pen and an envelope, and I wrote, please excuse Mike for being late today. He had to go to the doctor, and I signed my father's name. Now, I had been signing my father's name for years, so that wasn't a big deal. But it got a little more complicated. I went again one day the week after that, but it wasn't enough for Sandra. So I'm going a couple times a week now. And the problem was, not that I'm missing class, I'm already in college, I can't flunk out of anything, was that I'm running out of excuses. You could only say he's late because he went to the dentist, or he's late because he went to the eye doctor, or he's late because he's got raging diarrhea. You run out of excuses. And we would lie together in her double bed, and it was time to go. We'd work hard. Please excuse Mike, he's late today because a dog died and we had to bury it. We ran out of things to say, and that was the hard part. And then we would play games. She would say, it's my turn to write one. Please excuse Mike for being late today because I couldn't pry his hands off of my compliant body. But that wouldn't work. And I wrote one. Please excuse Mike for being late today. He spent the night in the hospital with raging psoriasis. That wouldn't work either. So anyway, a couple of weeks before graduation, I got called into the principal's office, and I knew the principal, and I wasn't terribly worried about it. And he was sitting behind his desk, and he has a folder. And he pulls out one of my excuses, and it says, please excuse Mike for today. I didn't remember what it was. And he went, who wrote this? And I said, my father. And he closed the folder, and he looked at me, and he said, do you have your National Honor Society card on you? And I reached in my wallet, and I gave it to him, and he ripped it up and let it fall into the wastebasket, and he went back to his reading and gave me a dismissive leave. And I started to leave, and I got as far as the door, and I went, that's it? That's my punishment for spending as many mornings I could with my girlfriend, getting the best nookie in the state of New Hampshire, or state of New Jersey, that's my punishment? Getting kicked out of an organization I didn't even ask to belong to. I resisted the urge to turn and give him a hug. My graduation was a few weeks later, and I made it through without falling asleep during the valedictorian, the salutatorian, and all that stuff. My only thing in my mind was about the parties, the graduation parties I would go to that night. And after the ceremony, I went up to find my parents, and they were in the distance. And my father was confronting the principal, and he's waving the program. And it wasn't sparks this time. It was like a black cloud over his head. And the principal met my eye, and he made a quick exit, and I walked up to my father, and he took the program. And he opened it, and he took his finger. And I said, what's he doing? He's pointing at my name. And then he turned the page, and he points down at the bottom. And down at the bottom it says, an asterisk next to the graduate's name means they are in the National Honor Society. And he turned back, and next to my name, no asterisks. He went to the car in a hurry, and my mother followed. My mother sort of was looking back with humor at the whole thing. And I got home and locked my door and figured that if I can't have the family car, I'll climb out the window and hitch. It's something I'd done many times. And there was a knock on the door, and my mother came in. I would give my parents credit. They always knocked before they came in my room. And my mother sat down, and she said, your father expects too much from you. I've always told you that. But here's the key to the car. And if he finds out about it, tell him you took it from my purse, because he would like that excuse better than if I gave it to you voluntarily. So I said, okay. And she said, let me ask you a question. Why were you late so many times? And when I told her, she laughed. I got home after the parties, and I was driving my car, my parents' car, into the driveway, which was lined with cement. And I scraped the rear corner panel, and real sparks came out. When you rub metal on cement, sparks come out. And the next day, my father came into my room, and he said, you know what happened to the car? And I said, no. That's the end.
Thanks, Mike. Our last storyteller for the evening is Dorothy Judd. Dorothy was born and raised in Boston, and after you hear her talk for a few minutes, you may still hear that in her voice. She taught elementary school in New Jersey for 27 years before moving to Hanover to help raise her grandkids. But she missed the classroom, so she started subbing at Hanover High School, and 13 years later is still doing that. She has published essays and a book called Kiddlywinks, a collection of stories about teaching and parenting. But with all those amazing accomplishments, her true claim to fame is that she was the 5th grade teacher of Whitney Houston. Dorothy.
I'm just afraid that some of you may have trouble sleeping tonight after you hear my story, but here it is. The sound of breaking glass woke me up, and I looked at the digital clock and saw that it was 0147. I wasn't too alarmed because I thought it was probably the cats knocking something over, but soon I heard whispering in the hall. And as I sat up in bed and looked out the door, I saw 3 men with ski masks on, and the first man came running into the room holding a gun to my neck and saying, "You won't get hurt if you just do what I say." And then all sorts of things started to happen. The other 2 men had run to my children's doors, and I had been screaming so loud that I had awakened both of them. And my daughter was coming to see what happened and almost collided with the burglar, who said to her, "Don't worry, it's not a rape, just do what I say." She was 13. My son was 15, and he had been lifting weights on a broomstick, and so he shook the weight off, had the broomstick, was standing by his door, ready to whack whoever it was over the head, but the man said, "Sonny, I've got a gun, just drop it." Now, at the same time that all this was going on, the man who had rushed into the bedroom was using electrical tape to bind up my husband's ankles and wrists. They were leading my children into the room and pushing them down onto the floor, face into the carpet, and then using pantyhose to tie them up. Once we were all in the same room, the leader, who we came to believe was named Mo, and we would hear him speaking to Mike, but at the same time hadn't heard the name of the third man. But Mo started asking us questions, and the first thing he said was, "Are you the Bizarres?" And I said, "No, we're the Judds, but this is bizarre. I can't believe that I said that." And then he asked all sorts of other questions, like our religious affiliation, our political leanings, what jobs we had, and by this time they had figured out that they had broken into the wrong house. But not to be deterred, they decided they'd make the most of it. And so they began going through everything in the room, drawers, reaching down into the toilet tank, pushing up into the attic crawl space, going through the linen closet, everything. And then they decided that I should go down into the basement with one of them to see if there was anything of value there. This particular person took off his ski mask. I'm not really sure why. But as we went down the stairs, he said, "You have a very nice house here, Mrs. Judd." And I said, "Thank you." And we went down into the basement, and he saw that we did not have a safe. But I said, yes, we did have a strong box. I took it out from its hiding place, gave him the key, he opened it. And we were standing there together, and he was looking through the papers and turned and said to me, "You're taking this very calmly." And I said, "I'm praying a lot." And he said, "That's a good idea." Meanwhile, when we came back upstairs, he asked me to lie on the floor between my children. And as they finished ransacking everything, I was thinking, how long can this go on? And then I heard a zipper, and I thought, oh God, no, please, please, because my worst fear had been that they would harm my daughter. But he was opening a shaving kit to make sure there was nothing of value hidden in there. By this time, more than an hour had gone by, more like an hour and 15 minutes. And I guess they found out that we didn't have as much as they wanted, but they had everything we had. And they got together and said, well, we'll go now. And as they were going down the stairs, one of them said, "We'll put sparks on the door." And I thought, oh my God, they're going to light the house on fire and we'll be here burning up. But no, the third intruder was named Sparks. As soon as we thought that it was safe to do anything or even to speak to one another, we whispered to one another and decided, okay, I think they're really gone now. Now this part gets really strange. My son, for years, had had his brother tie him up and then time him to see how long it would take him to get out of the ties. So, as soon as it was safe, snip, snap, and snurr, he was out of his bonds and was able to help us. My husband picked up the phone. Of course, the line had been cut. He ran to a neighbor's, even though it was only 4 a.m, and quickly the police came. They separated us so that they could get a story from each of us, and when they brought us back together, they said how lucky we were that it appeared that this had been a professional job, because you are much less likely to be harmed by professionals. We all had our after effects from this event. My daughter, I'm sure, was the most traumatized. Think of this, she was 13 years old. And it has had an effect on her even today, and that's, I believe, why she has become a prosecutor, married a cop, and has 3 big dogs. On the other hand, I had a very focused fear. Having spent time face-to-face with this man, I was absolutely convinced that I would be in the supermarket, he and I would both be reaching for the same item on a shelf and would recognize each other. That didn't happen. But as the years went on, and this happened 35 years ago, as time went on, of course, the terror of the whole event faded, and there were times when I even wondered if it had really happened. But then I heard a noise in the night, and I knew it had.
I don't usually lock my doors, but I think we will be tonight. So, actually, I think we should have put your story earlier in the lineup so that we don't all have to go out in the dark like this right now. But, well, thank you all for coming, and thank you all to our storytellers and the food vendors and musicians and everyone who helped make this a great event. Do you know is it December 11th is our next event. We are still looking for storytellers, so if you have a story to tell, please email us. It's mudroom@avagallery.org, I think, right? Outliers, sorry, is the theme, right? And so that's the theme, Outliers. So think of a story to tell, email us a quick synopsis of it, and hopefully we can include you. And if you don't want to tell a story, then at least come back next time.